Alright, today we're going to draw a dinosaur landscape using crayons and watercolors. So to first start, we're going to start off by drawing his body, which is going to be an oval. And then we're going to draw his head up here, which is another oval, but it's smaller. And we're going to use a Brontosaurus or Brachiosaurus, so it's a long-necked dinosaur. So then we need to connect the head to the body with two slightly curved lines. And now we're going to add the legs. Legs are kind of rectangular, but they do have a little bit of a curved bottom. And notice the little line that goes up into the body, that is there for the shoulder. He has a front shoulder and a back shoulder for the front legs and the back legs. And then his tail is so long. It starts in the middle ground, but it kind of curves around to the foreground. So this dinosaur's tail is so long that it takes up middle ground and foreground space. And now we're just going to go ahead and color him in. What color you draw him with is completely up to you. We just want to save a darker color to go in and add details. So if you draw him with a too dark of a color, the details might not show up. So I've decided to use mine with the green. Nobody's really seen a real live dinosaur, so nobody really knows what color they are. We can use our imaginations with this, although we do think that they look similar to the reptiles and amphibians that we have walking the earth today. So color it in, try to stay neat as you can, but if you go outside the lines a little bit, it's okay. The reason we're not drawing with black is because if we make a mistake, it's easy to color over and fix. So if you notice, there's a couple lines that might have been a little bit off, but when I color over them, you can't even tell. And really in art, nobody really knows you make a mistake unless you tell them anyway. Always act like you did it on purpose. Alright, so I'm coloring the belly, coloring the body. And we're going to do all our drawing and coloring with Crayola crayons today. We want to create a nice waxy surface because we're going to use watercolor paints to paint with. And when we paint with the watercolor paints, the waxy crayons will create a resist. And that resist will have a cool effect when we get ready to paint. So, alright, color in the head. And then start thinking about what darker color you're going to use. I'm going to use purple for my details. So once you finish doing that, find a purple crayon. You see, I kind of like to lay out all my crayons where I can see them and I'm not digging through a box or a basket. So if you can do that without them rolling on the floor, sometimes that works out best. So you see I traced his jawline, traced his mouth, drew in his nostril, drew in the eyebrow, and I draw in his eye. Remember, he has two eyes, two nostrils, but we can only see one because the other one's on the other side. Alright, now we're going to retrace that shoulder on the front and that shoulder on the back. And he is a three-dimensional animal. So we're going to add a little bit of a shading under his stomach just to show that he's round. I'm going to add in some little lines for toes. Kind of retrace some of the lines. Add some more shading under his tail. Remember, as his tail curves, though, the shading flips to the other side. Kind of helps bring him into another dimension. It doesn't look so flat when we add a little bit of value. And for this one, I'm going to give him polka dots. You can do polka dots, you can do stripes, or you can just leave him plain blue, or whatever color you chose. Completely up to you. I kind of think I'm kind of like the Flintstones and Barney Rubble and all the dinosaurs there. They always had spots. So I want to add some spots to them. Alright, now we're finished with that. Now let's start working on the next part. The next part, I'm going with brown. I'm going to create a tree for him to munch on. He was a herbivore, which means that he ate mostly plants. It means he ate all plants. So I'm going to make a palm tree that he's nibbling on. So a palm tree is kind of rough and bumpy. So I made sure to put some hatch marks. And notice how the head goes behind, or goes in front of the leaf, and the leaf goes behind. Now another cool thing is, if you ever find yourself where you're running out of room on your paper, it's okay to have things go off the edge. I see a lot of students try to keep everything on the paper. Notice how my leaf goes right off the edge. That's perfectly okay. Now remember, we're not going to color much anymore because we're going to paint. So there's some things we're going to color with the crayons because we want that wax resist. Some things we're not. Alright, so here's a wax resist technique. I drew the pond. Now I'm going to take a white crayon and I'm going to make some waves. You can't even hardly see it at all. In fact, you can't see it at all in the camera. But when I get ready to paint in a few minutes, it'll come right out. Now I'm going to take some yellow. I'm going to add some yellow highlights up in my leaves. I'm not coloring my leaf all yellow. Just putting some yellow marks for when we paint. It'll have a really cool effect. Alright, now I'm going to switch it up. Now I'm going to make the horizon line. Remember, the horizon line is the line that separates the sky from the ground. And it goes behind your object. So it goes behind the dinosaur, keeps going on the other side, behind the tree, behind anything it touches, it goes behind. part of the background. Remember, as things get farther away, they get smaller. So right now our dinosaur and our tree are in the middle ground, and then we have a pond and the tail in the foreground. Now we're going to work on the background. Let's make some volcanoes, maybe some mountains. Notice how they go behind the dinosaur and they overlap. Okay, so you're going to have to use your imagination. We want to make sure we make it look believable, so we don't want to draw through our tree because that wouldn't look right. Now I'm going to do a really cool effect here. I'm going to take yellow and I'm going to color the center of an erupting volcano, kind of like fire. Now I'm going to take some red and I'm going to color red around it. I want to make sure I color dark enough that it comes out really, 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 really dark. Because if you do it too light, the paint will not. Well, if you do it too light, the paint will go through the crayon. You want it real dark and waxy so the paint can't go through the crayon. I got a little bit of lava kind of creeping down the volcano. Now I'm going back to the blue. And I'm going to work on a cloud here. I like to make my clouds kind of flat on the bottom. And then just add another little layer to it. I'm going to go ahead and color it in white. We could just leave it white, but I kind of like adding that white waxy kind of area so that when we paint it has a really cool effect. Now a lot of people don't realize it, but clouds have shadows too. If you ever go outside and you look at a cloud, you can see that it has a shadow. A lot of people think it's just solid white. So in a second I'm going to show you how to make a shadow on a cloud. Now I'm going to take my color, draw a sun peeking out from behind the clouds. More overlapping. Remember, overlapping is important. Overlapping helps show depth. We want to have depth in our artwork. Alright, now I'm going to take some yellow, color that in real bright. Now I could just paint these things, but I really like the effect of wax resist when I'm using crayons and watercolors. So kind of do a little mixture. Don't want to color too much because I want to leave some areas for paint. But some areas look really good when I go in and paint over them. Alright, let's add a little shadow underneath our dinosaur. Something that big is going to have a shadow. This kind of makes him look like he's standing on the ground, not just floating in the air. Kind of grounds him a little bit. Alright, let's see what can we do next. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and start painting a little bit. Let's paint the tree. Notice how when I paint over that yellow spot, it does not cover up. If you go a little bit outside the lines, it's okay. Remember, the crayon lines are really just there for a guide. So painting, painting, painting. Alright. Notice how when I paint over that yellow mark, it doesn't cover up. It just beads right off. It's really cool that way if you get a little sloppy with the paint, the crayon just helps bring it all back together. Put a little green down here at the base of the tree for the grass. Notice if I add a little water, the green gets lighter. So if I want lighter colors, I always add water to it. So I want it real light in this area, so I've used a lot of water. Whereas with the leaves, I didn't use as much water because I wanted it real light. Alright, good thing about the crayon, like I said, if you go a little bit over your dinosaur, it doesn't really matter because it's going to bead right off. Now when you paint color next to other paint, we got to be careful because they will mix together. Alright, so paint the foreground, spreading the paint around. Lay a little bit on my table, it's not a big deal, watercolor washes right off. We don't want to get too sloppy with it, but if it goes a little bit off the edge, it's okay. So I would just paint right over the tail, right over the dinosaur, doesn't even matter. Beads right off. Alright, we finish this part of the background back here. Remember, a landscape has three main parts. It has a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. You can put all three of those parts in your painting. You'll create a sense of depth and make your landscape look a lot more believable. Alright, paint the tree trunk. What's cool about this is as it dries, those little crisscross lines will kind of come through and show texture. Alright, let's make some purple volcanoes back here. Notice how I painted right over that lava and it didn't even cover it up. So anything you put with a crayon, if you color the crayon dark enough, you cannot paint over it with the watercolor. Alright, I'm going to paint the other mountains back here. Believe it or not, we're almost finished. We're getting closer. Got to finish the mountains, the sky. Up, but it's mixed a little blue in here. Kind of, they were looking a little too purple. So I'll make it more of a blue violet. Just spreading that paint around a little bit. Don't forget these volcanoes and mountains back here behind the tree and the dinosaur. Alright, now let's start working on the pond. This is where those little waves are going to show up. Watch the little waves show up. Look at that. All those little white waves you drew show right up in the painting. It's a great effect. If you use it right, you can get some really cool effects with wax resist. Alright, now painting. Notice I paint right over my clouds and sun. Doesn't even matter. I'm going to paint right over them. That waxy crayon keeps it from getting covered up. And when you get close to other painted areas, you got to be careful because otherwise they all kind of mix together. So when I get close to the mountains, I'm being real careful with the brush. When I'm near the crayon areas, it doesn't really matter. Around the tree, I got to be careful because I don't want that green paint mixing with my sky. Maybe it does a little bit, no big deal. Just let it dry a little bit and you can paint back over it when it dries. Alright, finish this little area over here. Alright. Now you see how my brown in my tree kind of mixed in with the green? That's because I didn't let it dry. So now let me just go in here and kind of clean it up a little bit, add some more details. Kind of darkening my tree trunk. Let me just go with the black and make the crisscross lines and texture a little better. My paper is not all the way dry, it's mostly dry. Probably want to let it dry all the way for you to do your details. Fix up some of my tree branches here, my tree leaves, redefine them. That's a good thing about a painting is once you let it dry, you can always go back in and redefine some things. So if things kind of blurred together or didn't quite turn out the way you wanted it, you can always go back in and add some more details. Add some little shadowing on the leaves. Alright. It's almost there. Now let's go add that shadow I was talking about on the clouds. Clouds have shadows. So I'm just going to go in my black and just lightly color just the bottom part. That'd be the shadow. And what's really cool, if you ever notice when you're standing outside, there's also a shadow from the cloud on the ground if you can find it. Alright, let's make some tall grass kind of cover up that little spot that's kind of sticking out from the tree where our paint kind of bled off. Maybe that grass kind of grew, got a little out of control. Alright, tidying it up a bit. Alright, and there we have it.